Hey, it's Fletch. I'm Vice President of Public Safety Solutions at 911 Inform. Welcome to our new podcast series, The Cutting Edge, where we talk about some new tech in public safety that enhances the information that public safety dispatchers and first responders have that will increase the situational awareness and the effectiveness of their response. Now, join us for this episode of The Cutting Edge. You know, in every 911 call center, probably the number one problem that they experience is location for callers. So call takers deal with this almost on every single call, mainly because communications has changed. Telephone numbers used to be on individual devices, and they used to be in locations that frankly never moved. But now every device that's out there is a communications device. It's all got the same phone number as all your other communication devices, and location is a bit of a mystery. So joining me today are two experts in this field. First is Jeremy DeMar, ENP, who is the director of the Mountain Valley Emergency Communications Center right here in New Jersey. Welcome, Jeremy. Good to have you back.
Thank you, sir. Good to be back.
And also joining me all the way from Scotland is a strategic operations manager with the Scottish Ambulance Services, Nick Sutton, who has developed some very interesting applications that will help solve this problem. Joining us all the way from overseas. Thanks very much for making the time with us here today, Nick.
Not at all. Thank you very much for having me, Fletch.
So, Jeremy, you guys have actually implemented quite a lot of new technologies. You are kind of a technology head, and you take advantage of all the tools that are out there for the tool bag. What have you guys done at MVECC to improve on location?
So, we already, like most centers across the country, we already have conventional location determination measures in place through triangulation, so on and so forth. We also, shortly after I arrived, we implemented Rapid SOS's jurisdiction view. So we have enhanced capabilities through them as well. But I discovered shortly after I arrived that there was still kind of a gap that we hadn't quite filled relative to folks that simply don't know where they are and where conventional location determination technology was not really helping us out at all. And I'd done a little bit of research in the space, but frankly, not a great deal of it. Somebody reached out to me at one point from a company called What3Words. And at the time, I was still in the middle of doing a lot of different things. And so I wasn't able to immediately respond to that person. But I found out after the fact, I think I was watching a CBS This Morning session or something, and they did this whole thing on UK-based What3Words. And I started looking at this, and I told my wife, who was sitting next to me at the time, I said, somebody from there reached out to me. I've got to make a point to reach out. So anyways, I got back to the office. I started looking for the email. I couldn't find it. So I ended up having to go to their website and just submit a general solicitation saying have somebody call me. Well, fortunately, Ashley Cashin from What3Words ended up calling me up shortly thereafter. And I asked her, I'm like, did you reach out to me a while? And she goes, yeah. I said, okay, sorry, I couldn't find your email. But in any event, I'm glad that we got connected. But my biggest reason for reaching out to them was I wanted to find out what all the hubbub was about. I mean, we were hearing all these great things about these success stories that are occurring overseas with their technology. And I really hadn't heard a whole lot going on over here stateside with the use of the technology. So I just really wanted to hear more about it. So by the time I was done talking to Ashley, she had explained to me that the solution itself, in very much the same way Rapid SOS does with public safety entities, they had discovered other ways of monetizing it. So it was completely free to public safety entities, which of course, you and I have known each other for a long time. That's one of my favorite four-letter words. They weren't going to charge us for that. But even more importantly than that, it's not going to add a tremendous amount of additional integration on platforms that we're already using, which is going to require our dispatchers to read a 400-page book about how to use these applications. So ease of use, implementation is very, very easy. And of course, the price is right. I kept looking for the fine print and couldn't find any. And shortly thereafter, we implemented that. It wasn't until after we implemented What3Words that I discovered one of the areas that we still needed to work on was what happens if you have somebody that is unable to communicate back to you what the What3Words sequence is when you send them the link to retrieve it. And we know that this is already a problem here locally. I mean, if you ever, how many times have we heard about situations where somebody is in a home that's being burglarized, or there's somebody in their home and they can't talk, they can't speak, so on and so forth. Or, fortunately, we've seen a definite downward spin in the number of active assailant, active shooter events that has happened. But I think we can expect, as the pandemic starts to wind down, that you're probably unfortunately going to see more of these. But anytime you're in a situation like that in an academic facility or a large scale building, if somebody can't verbalize those 3 words to you, we still need to have a solution in place for that. And that's really where, in my opinion, emergency locate really shines. And that's how I ultimately ended up talking with Nick. In fact, I don't remember, Nick, exactly how you and I, actually, we might have connected through you, Fletch. Now that
I think you might have, actually. So it's interesting, there's a lot of different technologies in play. And this is very new to a lot of people. So I want to just make sure that I level set what's actually happening here. So the What3Words technology is really just, I call it shorthand for accurate location. Sure, I could recite latitude and longitude out to the 7th or 8th decimal place. I might transpose figures. I often don't know what a street address is, where I am. And if I'm in a large public area like a college campus or a state park, there's really no specific address that provides anybody with any granularity of where I am. And so What3Words is a way of taking a 3 meter by 3 meter square spot on the entire planet and mapping that into 3 specific words that are unique to each individual square. So I can recite 3 words to you. You can put that into a web browser on your side, and you'll be able to retrieve the exact 3 by 3 plot of land that I happen to be referring to. And that's great because it gives me an easy way to communicate that level of accuracy that just isn't there today. Now, the other part of that is, what do you do with that information? In the center, obviously, people can't talk, so we've got a way of communicating that for people who can't talk. But also, all of that information, the street address, the areas, the maps, all of that has got to be input into your computer-aided dispatch solution or your CAD. And that's a role that Emergency Locate kind of fills. Not only do they provide that interface for a user to say, I am here, and to capture that 3 words location and bring that into your desktop, but they also provide integration on your side in the ECC that actually gets the information into where the call takers can utilize it, right?
That's exactly right, Fletch. And What3Words is super interesting, and your definition was 100% correct there. But I'd like to summarize it. I like to say that What3Words is really the language of location, and what those guys are bringing to the party is they're addressing the unaddressable. So, like you said, 3 by 3 meter squares of land, or even actually open bodies of water. So, there's been a number of incidents in the press recently whereby help was directed to an individual in trouble on the water, a kayaker or somebody out sailing, and we can give those squares an address now because of What3Words. And those guys haven't reinvented the wheel. There's still the underlying GPS or latitude, longitude coordinates that exist for that point. But like you say, instead of reaming off 10, 15 digits, it's just 3 words. So it's super easy to communicate a high accuracy location with a high degree of efficiency using What3Words.
As a location technology reporting tool provider, we always pined on, God, if only everybody was to carry an accurate GPS beacon with them so we could find them. And then all of a sudden, these became really popular. And so, wait a minute, everybody is using or carrying a GPS beacon. So Domino's Pizza can find me. Uber can find me. Everybody can find me down to literally a couple of meters. And when you look at the average cellular technology, from radio triangulation. A lot of things get in the way of radio waves. And, you can, depending if someone's inside, outside, a lot of people don't realize it, but GPS is actually a line of sight technology. And if you're inside of a building, you're getting a very skewed view of that triangulation. And Jeremy, what would you say accuracy is inside of a big concrete steel building?
Well, actually, Nick and I actually did an extensive amount of testing with this. Once we had decided to move forward with emergency locate solution, uh, we did a lot of testing. In fact, I was at home at the time, and when the pin actually dropped when we were using the technology, I mean, it literally, I was in my living room, and in our house, it literally dropped the pin probably within feet of where I was sitting in the living room. So it was super accurate. Walked outside, did some different things with that, and were able to redetermine location at that point. But from an accuracy standpoint, I was blown away. And again, there's other tools that we have that provide us with comparable means of determining location with that level of accuracy. But you never know, as beneficial as technology is, you never know when you're not going to have a particular application at your disposal, or are they going to be having technical difficulties with it, whatever it happens to be. So that's why having these second and third and fourth options, if you will, is just it's a major push for us to make sure that there are multiple levels of redundancy built into the solution. And when I was developing the policy for What3Words and emergency locate, it very clearly says in our policy, we will the majority of the time primarily use conventional location determination measures to determine what's going on. It's quite conceivable that organizations like emergency locate, we may only use them once, twice, 3 times a year. But you only need to have a solution like that be successful once when it comes to life preservation or saving, or preventing a serious injury, to find the value in that. And then in this particular case, my thought process was, let's get the tools, let's get the application in place and start messing around with it early on, instead of waiting for something bad to happen and saying, well, now we've chosen to do this, even though unfortunately it's after the fact. I would rather take that proactive approach. And that's why I love seeing companies like Nix, coming out and introducing these applications and making them available from a public safety standpoint. Hyper accurate, very easy to work with, not a tremendous learning curve, just super easy to implement and use.
So you've been around the industry for a long time, Jeremy, and you actually did your master's white paper or thesis on incident-related video imaging, right? So this is all new technology to the day-to-day dispatcher and what they were doing. How is all of this additional data affecting policies in the center and affecting what the workload is going to be?
Yeah, so I think the change management side of this equation comes into play as well. In fact, shortly after we introduced emergency locate and What3Words, there was a couple of other initiatives that we started talking about doing. And I try to be conscientious of what's going on the operations floor at all times. And the reason that I'm that way is because, having sat in that chair for so many years, I know how tough it is when you've got a developed system in place for dealing with these situations to suddenly have new technology coming in. Now, I was in a slightly different situation when I was sitting in the seat, where some folks were very, very comfortable with sticking with what they had and not necessarily embracing new things that were coming along. I always wanted to check out the gadgets and the widgets and see how they could help make things more beneficial. I think what really just makes the emergency locate application awesome, based on what I used to have to do as a supervisor, which was only about 3.5 years ago, all the time that we spent pinging cell phones and contacting mobile providers and jotting down coordinates and going into Google Maps and doing all these things, we've effectively eliminated that. And I think about the time saving there. So even though it's technically another thing that our folks are having to do, it's eliminating 2 or 3 separate tasks, which normally would have been required to accomplish the very same thing. So we're streamlining that process a bit. And I still provide it to my folks as, this is the tool in the toolbox. We've heard that term 1,000 times. This is a tool. You're not going to use it every day, but have that tool accessible. Make sure that you review it periodically. Go in there and mess around with it. I mean, Nick and I have talked about it a lot. When we started testing it, his company sends updates out to all of the subscribers, letting us know what he's working on and everything. I in turn send that out to my folks just so that there's a constant flow of information. But I want to encourage them to go in there and mess with it and fool around with it. In fact, Nick and I have had conversations since we started doing that where I've asked him about things as a result of situations that my folks have brought up from doing just that. So the best way to make that solution effective for everybody and to make it easier for Nick and his team to get that thing updated is for us to keep that data flow going. But I think I've circled around your question a little bit, but the big thing is here, we've eliminated a lot of additional things that our folks used to have to do to accomplish the same task and really streamline it into one process.
No, that's fantastic. And you brought up the term sitting in the chair a couple of different times. And although it was a couple of centuries ago when the dinosaurs roamed the earth, I sat in the chair and I've got that better understanding for public safety applications. And you always run into the developers that are really smart coding guys. They can build any app to do anything. But, I remember asking one guy one day who was writing some public safety apps. I said, do you have any experience? Oh, yeah, I've got a lot of experience. What experience do you have? Well, I dialed 911 several times in my life. And, okay, you called 911. Great. So you really don't understand how this all works. Nick, what have you done? What's in your background that brings out that level of knowledge around what's needed on the desk? You've got quite a few years in the chair.
Quite a few, yes. Nowhere near as many as you, Fletch, or even Jeremy, I suspect. So I think it's 18 years this year, rapidly approaching with the ambulance service. So I started as a call handler, emergency medical dispatcher, and took the calls for a few years before moving on to dispatch, because here in the UK there are separate positions. And shortly after that, I qualified as an instructor and then a training manager before making the move to operational management whilst I was in Manchester, which was a huge challenge, but it was great to be able to take the knowledge and experience of how the dispatch centre works out into the field. And since then, moved up the road to Scotland, where I am now, and been able to pull together some people and my own knowledge, and lucky enough to provide a solution that is emergency locate. And I think Jeremy summarized it quite well before. I know these processes, I know how long it takes, I know how difficult it can be, and the pressure that people are under when we're asked to do those things, to ping those cell towers and find that phone, and know how important it is. So that all went into emergency locate, and hopefully it's resulted in a solution that really solves the problem and solves it in a way that eliminates risk of an error as far as we practically can. It gives you the very best chance of a location. And even, if you can't get a text message, or you don't have mobile internet, or you can't speak properly, then we still have ways to retrieve a location. So it's a highly resilient tool in terms of being able to provide you with what you need at the start of your emergency call, which is, of course, to know where to send the help.
So, Nick, was there a particular incident, or do you remember the time when you got fed up with the tools that you had in front of you, or the lack of the tool that you needed, that inspired this application?
Well, I got fed up at day one, really, because so 18 years ago, this is still even then, this is probably 10-year-old tech. So we're talking about 15, 20-year-old tech that we're all utilizing now, whether it's emergency locate, What3Words rapid, it's all the underlying process of taking the information from the GPS chip on your phone and doing something with it, whether we convert it to 3 words, or we put it on a map, or we silently exchange it with the control room center. It's the same infrastructure underneath it. And I was lucky enough to understand a little bit back then around how that works. So I knew it was possible. And since then, iPhone came along and changed everything, and the internet grew to what it is today. And now, I can check the Domino's app and see how far through the oven my pizza is, or where Uber is up to, and we don't see that in emergency services, and we should, because the technology is there, it's readily accessible. But what I think we've suffered from is big tech and developers doing things because they can and not because they should, and invariably that's resulted in solutions that are too difficult for us to integrate into a control room, which is effectively, it's critical infrastructure. We can't just throw another screen on the desk because we don't have any room left, because we're full of screens. And we can't install software on control room PCs because they need to be so secure. And the approach really needs some careful consideration. And basically, after years of frustration, I did decide to build Emergency Locate. And when I started, it was nothing like what it is today. And What3Words certainly helped with that process along the way. But in answer to your question, no, there wasn't one particular incident, but there's definitely a string of incidents from either call taking or dispatching where it's frustrated because it either took me a long time to get the incident, or I knew it took a long time to find the right resource because I didn't know where the help was needed. And nowadays, as a manager here in Scotland, I look at these reports of complaints and adverse outcomes, and you look at it and think, we emergency services should have been able to do better because the tools are available. And thankfully, there's much more awareness about that these days, and people are bringing more tools into the control rooms to help the staff in there do the difficult jobs that they do. And the tagline for Emergency Locate is to expand the toolbox. And as Jeremy said, it's not a tool you might use every day, but it's still there. It's there to be picked up when you need it, when you find those circumstances. And for me, it's the more tools, the better, that are available to emergency personnel. Is the way that we need to go.
So, in addition to saving lives, is this going to help us find Nessie? I had to ask. I'm sorry, Nick.
You knew that would come up in this conversation.
You guys are both welcome to come over here and try and find Nessie.
I've seen enough of the research. I don't need to come over.
It's really kind of interesting. And as with any new technology, I think there's a big misunderstanding between the general public and the people that are actually using the tech. And Jeremy, a good friend of ours, Tracy Eldridge, actually has had a couple of podcasts on What3Words and this kind of technology for the public safety industry so they could better understand what the technology actually is. What3Words doesn't locate anybody. They use the standard GPS, Wi-Fi, all of the mechanisms in the back end, but they just consolidate that. And what What3Words is a 3-word shortcut to identify a location. An Emergency Locate doesn't go out and find people. It uses, again, the GPS location technology that's built into the smart device, that provides them with the location, but they streamline the flow of that information into the other tools that you're using where you need it. Do you see people, Jeremy, come up with or starting to understand the delineation in this, or is this still an educational problem?
Well, I think the academic side of it is always going to be necessary. I mean, you're going to have to do a certain amount of education with everybody on this. But I think the key piece here, both from a consumer perspective or the folks that we're working with out in the citizens that are calling us for assistance, and certainly the folks that are here in our center, is ease of use, right? It's that native location information already resides within the core of those wireless devices that we carry around. Applications like Emergency Locate are just extracting that information, like you said, ingesting it, and then sending it down to us and giving us a better interface to use it. But to the point made earlier about that long string of coordinates, going through and having somebody, first of all, trying to explain to somebody that doesn't know where they are, okay, I need you to go in and find into your native location area of your phone, and then you go in there and I want you to read the XY to me and start with this. But that was one of the biggest motivations for going this direction, because having been, quote, the quote, in the chair for as many years as I was, I know that a lot of times, number one, when you're getting somebody on the phone, we all know that they're generally not calling you on their best day. It's generally their worst day. to try to get somebody calmed down to the point where they can read out that long string of numbers versus being able to spiel off 3 words to you, that's in and of itself, that was enough of a no-brainer for me to implement. But that's just one piece of the equation. The interface has to be easy enough for the folks on the outside that we're interacting with to be able to use. And it has to be easy for our public safety pros in the seats, in the chairs here, to be able to take that information in, ingest it, use it, and determine the closest dispatchable location. So, you know, Nick's application does a tremendous job of doing that. I would love to see more opportunities for us to be able to use it. But again, to the point I made earlier, it only has to work once. From an educational standpoint, we've done, you know, I've got a relatively strong social media presence for good reason. I want to make sure that folks understand, number one, that we're implementing these newer technologies and that they don't have to be afraid of that. And I think, unfortunately, there's a lot of people that sit in my seat throughout the country that maybe they're not necessarily early adopters. They're not disruptors. You know, they just kind of want to see how things are going. And that's perfectly fine. What I have a problem with is when folks that sit in my seat completely shut out, you know, evolving technology and say, we're good with what we've got. When we hear these stories about people that have been seriously injured or killed because something wasn't done or some particular protocol or policy wasn't followed or whatever it happens to be, it shouldn't be a special practice to try to get ahead of that, to try to prevent it before it occurs. And implementing solutions like emergency locate is stepping us in that direction. Yes, it's a change for our people. Yes, it's adding a task or something that wasn't done previously onto the plates of our people. But again, tool in the toolbox. You're not using it every day. You don't pull out a hammer every day if you're not going to hammer something, right? It stays in the toolbox. This is the same thing that I try to explain to all my folks. Yes, I'm giving you this. Yes, I'm giving you this. Put them in your bag and just kind of hang on to them. And the day that you actually need them, that's when you pull them out. And I would rather have those things accessible for our folks and know that they can go and retrieve that information and bring it up and use it than to say, gee, it would have really been nice to have had emergency locate for this and to not have had that set up. If folks listening to this podcast, Fletch, do nothing else, have a conversation with Nick. He's more than happy to jump on a Zoom with you and talk to you about the solution. Learn more about the product. My biggest emphasis in the seat that I sit in right now is not necessarily to sell anybody on the idea of anything. Nick's not paying me for this. You're not paying me for this. This is passion. This is drive. This is all about improving our profession and what we bring to the table. But if you don't even have the conversation, not only are you selling yourself short, but you've effectively made the decision for everybody in your community that you serve, as well as your public safety partners. You've taken that away from them and you haven't even given it a chance. Give it an opportunity, give Nick an opportunity to talk to you about what this application can do, learn about it. If you decide afterwards you don't want to do it or you want to wait, fine, but at least take the time to learn about it. That's what I did, and that's why we implemented it.
You know, it's just the natural evolution of public safety technology. New things are coming out every single day, and problems that have been problems for years are more easily solvable now with the adaptation of some new technologies. You know, public safety has always lived in this bubble, but if you live inside that bubble and you never go outside or you never let any new resources in, you're going to run out of air eventually. So one of the things that I like about this product is that it is generic. It works kind of across the board. It's not even geographically specific. So you've got this deployed in several places around the world, right, Nick?
Yeah, that's right, Fletch. We are deployed in the UK, US, and Canada as well.
Yeah, because you know the problem is the problem, and it exists everywhere. And that's, you know, people need to understand that this is solving kind of a global issue. And where do you see the product going? What? Give me a peek into what's on your radar for the future.
Lots of work is on my radar, Fletch. I think the product itself has grown immensely in the last 12 months, and it's really, there's two things that I really enjoy. I really enjoy getting emails back from dispatch center managers to say, hey, we used emergency locate to find this person and save a life. I get a couple of those emails every month, and I also look to hear the feedback. People come back and say, hey, Nick, can we do this? Could we tweak that? So I really enjoy making the solution better. It's quite a responsive solution as well, because we're a small outfit, we're quite agile. So, for example, there was a suggestion made about 2 weeks ago, which that's already on the development account in testing now, and will be rolled out in about 2 weeks. So that's really important as well, to be responsive and agile enough to adapt to the feedback from customers, everybody that's using emergency locate. But I guess where we need to go will depend on the demand. We're about to send our 5,000th message, which we'll probably do in early March, which is huge. And those milestones are getting closer and closer as well. It wasn't so long ago that we just sent out 3,000, and we completely missed 4,000. I don't know what happened to that one. That just that came and went. But in terms of where we go, I guess that it's important to know a few things about emergency locate. So we have a free tier, which is exclusive to emergency services, and the reason behind that is to add value to What3Words implementations and help support centers that have got an understanding and are wanting to use What3Words. We can support that and add value to that process for free for emergency services. At the other end of our scale, we have an API which allows us to integrate into control room software such as CAD or telephony systems, and that is where we would really like to go for the next sort of 2 to 3 years is work on that angle, because I know, as somebody that's been in a control room, the way to make new tools available without a huge training requirement, or by the danger with putting something in a toolbox is it stays in the toolbox, you might forget about it, or when you get it out, you've forgotten how to use a tool. So for me, the next place to take emergency locate is integration, because by making it available in the primary user interface, the CAD, and you remove a lot of that, emergency locate would just be a button click away in the CAD. So that's where we're headed over the next few years.
That's great. I mean, and the business that I'm in is, emergency event detection from within large enterprise buildings, schools, campuses, commercial buildings, et cetera. And I was down at our office yesterday, and one of the school districts, not too far away from you, actually, Jeremy, not in your area, but very close to it. We had an alert come over. We saw an alert come over for an emergency event in the building. I don't remember which one they particularly triggered, but we had built in a training mode into our software. So just like you would have fire alarms, or everybody lines up and walks outside and go through that, we actually saw a school go through a training mode, and the Peace app was actually interacting with them on that, because that's what our app does. It puts that information on the display of the 911 center. And we were watching the two interact with each other and kind of working out the procedures for a real event. And it was like, and I always thought the training piece of that was great, but I never really saw it in action. I said, oh my God, everybody just learned 4 or 5 things that are going to make that better. So when you've got applications like this, I think the training mode is a critical piece where you can simulate an event and actually practice using it. Because Jeremy, as you well know, it's the operational procedure side that really is the big barricade to any technology coming out.
Yeah, and the fact that we are, as PSAPs and ECCs throughout the country, I mean, we are as involved in the public safety equation as any of the other providers that are out there. I mean, I've always, and I know I didn't coin the phrase, but we are, in my opinion, the hub of public safety, where everything comes into us, and we ultimately move that information out appropriately to our public safety partners to make sure people get the help that they need. But folks that folks that do the job that I do have to wear a variety of hats. But one of the biggest hats we have to wear is that technology evaluation hat. Is there a solution out there that's going to be able to better benefit or augment practices we currently have in place that is going to allow us to provide a better level or a higher level of service to those that we serve? And that's why, for me, I take that role very seriously. And having applications like this available, it's just one more way for us to enhance it. And this is just a small part of it. And the other thing that I want to talk about relative to what Nick just mentioned is the integration piece is critical. And I can't echo that sentiment enough. I mean, the fact that we talked about having tools in the toolbox is one thing, but how often do we have folks sitting in the chair that because they're not using it on a regular basis? And and What3Words and Emergency Locator are an excellent example of this. You may only use this one, two, three times a year. But in this particular situation, if we can put an icon or if we can put a clickable link or something or integrate it into the CAD interface or a mapping, whatever it happens to be, it now becomes contextually a part of what we do every single day, and not just something that, I know we've got something out there that let me go find that. It's right here, it's right in front of us. And I see that, we've also joked as we've talked about how consoles and how displays are set up at centers now. You're starting to see a little bit of a shift from 8 different screens to one large multiplexed screen that people can arrange however they want. And that's because integration, it's bringing everything into that singular platform so that our folks can ingest it all at the same time and have easy access to it. So anytime we can take something like this and incorporate that into our daily practices, to Nick's point, it's a win-win for him, and it's certainly a win-win for our people when they're trying to help somebody out.
I had a very interesting discussion yesterday with some of our senior staff, and they said, let me give you an example. You walk into the average PSAP, 6 to 8 screens in front of the dispatcher. You look at an early picture of the space shuttle cockpit, buttons and dials and gauges and everything everywhere, all over the place. You look at what Elon Musk built and the new SpaceX, big flat screen with all the information they need, context sensitive. So the whole user experience interface is changing. And I think a lot of the applications that you use every day are just stuck in that old model. I was just doing some work the other day, and I had a picture of an Annie Alley screen, an Annie Alley spill that came in. And I'm like, what's really valid on that screen? So yeah, all the information is relevant, but not all at the same time. That is a very poor representation of that data. If you could break that apart and show what needs to be shown at different segments of the event, it's much more efficient. So
right.
we've got to redesign the user experience in the PSAP to be more flexible to accept things like the What3Words interface.
I'm waiting for Nick's enhancement from that movie Minority Report, so I can just we can just do things with our hand and
absolutely. You know what?
Probably not that far off.
It's probably not that far off. So very interesting. So final words, Jeremy.
Not just for Nick's solution, but for technology in general. And I know, again, those who know me know that I'm very passionate about this, but I really want to encourage public safety leaders in this space across the country to not necessarily be eager or be the first to adopt these things, but at least be open to having a conversation. And far too many of the folks, and I never name names, far too many of the folks that I've talked to that don't necessarily embrace technology in the same way that I do, they're not in any way open to the conversation. And I always, one of the things that really just kills me the most is when I hear somebody say, well, that'll be after I retire. We had that, how long have we been working on NG911?
Yeah, far too long.
And there still are people saying that'll be after I retire. It's already here. It's been here for several years. Our industry partners and vendors are driving technology. They're driving demand. one of the other things that I didn't mention earlier was, I choose to implement a lot of these things. And I want to make sure that I'm clear on this as well. Just because somebody emails me something and said, hey, here's a new widget, I don't implement it. I get emails like that all the time. In fact, as of late, after these podcasts and talking to a lot of different people, now I'm getting even more. There's a lot of stuff I don't implement that you guys never even hear about. I don't mind being recognized as somebody that's appreciative of technology and willing to deploy it, but I don't implement everything.
Yeah.
I mean, Nick will tell you. I mean, we put his application and continue to this day to put it through the paces to test it and check it out. I have, and if something happened with his or somebody else's that I didn't like and he didn't have an immediate fix for it, I might politely say, hey, Nick, let's revisit this at some point. But again, I'm very, very specific about what I will bring in. But if you do nothing else, if you're sitting in this seat across the country or I mean, Nick's worldwide, so anywhere that you're sitting in this seat, do yourself a favor and have the dialogue. And I'm not just talking about with Nick, I'm talking about with anybody that has a solution, even if you do nothing more than read a white paper about it, just to pique your interest. Because if you don't at least do the research, if you don't have a better understanding of what's out there, you're really doing a disservice to those that you're serving. And I feel it's my responsibility to do just that. I have to get out there. I have to learn about it. We are technology driven, and to be the one that puts the the stamp on something that says we're not going to do it. You've now made the decision for all those people without even involving them in the conversation, and maybe without being properly educated. Get out there and listen. Take the time, sit down with these folks, and learn about the solutions before making a blind decision.
No, very well said. Very, very well said. So, Nick, final words from you on this amazing technology that you're doing in addition to your normal day-to-day job, by the way. That's
true. Yeah. Time's a precious resource at the minute. But I think in terms of last words, what I'd like people to take away is that whilst What3Words is available as an app, as a website, and it's something that we should all engage with, I see What3Words as a mechanism, it's a cog, and it's really easy to implement into your existing solution. I know even you managed it, Fletch. I managed it, and tons of other applications have managed it as well. It is even coming to CAD systems because it's not difficult to integrate. So, as Jeremy says, make yourself aware of What3Words and have the conversation about integration, because it's the best thing for your staff. It's the easiest way to access this brilliant technology. What I would say, though, is at the minute, What3Words is being used in the 911 caller to dispatch phase, at the very start of the emergency call, the where is the caller question. But we can do so much more with What3Words once the control room has established a What3Words address. So regardless of how you or your staff establish location details for callers, go the extra mile and make it so that however that location is established, you understand what the What3Words address is, because the next thing that 911 and 999 and 112 will wake up to is the power of a What3Words address in a controlled environment. So a very quick example, we all know that as control room managers and whatnot, that each other's control room is the most frequent caller. So for ambulance, police and fire, fires, police and ambulance, etc., etc. And the amount of, firstly, calls, and secondly, hours that our staff will be spending every single day communicating complex locations from one agency to another, which first of all takes time. Secondly, every time we have one of those conversations, we lose accuracy. So I could have got I might have had a 911 call with a rapid SOS hit down to 6 meters. And then I pass it to another agency and I tell them about it and they type it into their CAD and gazetteer, and they might come up with some coordinates that are maybe 100 meters away because that's the nearest property. So we've lost the accuracy there. So by using What3Words in an emergency setting from a controlled environment to another controlled environment, we can save thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of hours every year by making What3Words the language of location, not just with your caller, but in between agencies and in the response phase of your incidents as well. We could be deploying resources to a What3Word address. We could be incident commanders at the scene of an incident asking for a helicopter to land at a What3Word address, because that is specifically where we need that help. We can take all the guesswork out of it and make getting things from A to B so much more efficient with What3Words. And that is why Emergency Locate chose to implement What3Words. We don't specifically establish a What3Word address. We establish location and we talk about it in terms of a What3Word address because it's the most efficient way to do it. And I honestly believe in the next year, 18 months, 2 years maybe, emergency services will wake up to the full extent of what What3Words can do for them. And I'm not even sure the guys at What3Words are onto this yet. So, you're hearing this first. This is an exclusive. It's hugely powerful, and we can save time and lives with it. So, check it out, please.
No, excellent words, Nick. So how does someone get a hold of you?
You can get hold of me at my at the website, which is emergencylocate.co.uk. On Twitter, I'm Emergency Locate, and LinkedIn, you can find me there. My full name is Nick Sutton.
What's your What3Words address, Nick?
I'm not telling you, Fletch.
And Jeremy, you're a thought leader in the industry. Everybody knows where to find you, but real quick, where do people go to get your stuff?
So yeah, I'm on pretty much all the different social media platforms. So you can look for me there. You can email me at J.Demar, J-D-E-M-A-R @npsm911.org. The only other thing I wanted to add too before we wrapped up was if anybody is interested in policies or procedures that we have created internally for the use of Emergency Locate, What3Words, and other applications, I'm happy to share those. So in fact, I've already shared my policies with a couple of other agencies that were asking about it. So please feel free to reach out to me if you want to ask me anything about operationalizing it, conversations with Nick that I've had about different technologies, but I'm happy to share those thoughts and ideas with you. And I'm absolutely thrilled for those of you in advance that choose to reach out and have these conversations. I think they're great.
And also a great paper on incident video from your master.
Incident related imagery, but we won't.
Imagery.
Yeah, you can shorten it up to IRI if you want. Some folks have done that, but happy to share that as well.
Very interesting paper though, but well worth it. It was a great topic for you to do for your masters, and I found it very interesting. Great reference. So, all right. Well, listen, guys, thanks very much. Ultimately, hopefully somewhere this technology will continue to save lives. And, just by our talking about it, hopefully we've inspired someone to at least take a look and understand what can be done. It's the art of the possible is what I like to call it. So, Jeremy, Nick, thank you very much for joining me today. We appreciate it. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks, Fletch.
Cheers.
Cheers. You've been listening to the Cutting Edge Podcast, brought to you by 911 Inform, where we make seconds count. Visit us on the web at 911inform.com. I'm Mark Fletcher, Vice President of Public Safety Solutions. Remember, you can follow me on Twitter at Fletch911, and be sure to check out the rest of my podcasts at Fletch.tv. Thanks again for listening. Stay safe and have a great day.